people who worked in restaurants, what was the worst customer that you had to deal with? A lady from the real estate agency next door ordered a chicken box, and then proceeded to drive an hour to her next showing. In the middle of summer, where it probably say right in front of her AC unit in the passenger seat. Surprise, surprise, food gets cold when left in the cold. Who knew? Upon the shocking discovery that food doesn't stay warm, she called us to scream at my boss that we tried to kill her. Because he's a spineless pushover in the summer, he agreed to give her a new free meal when she came back. She came to get her free food, and things didn't improve. One of our chefs came to collect her cold food. While still in front of the window, he opened the box and fished out the uneaten biscuit. He threw the rest away, but walked away with the bread. I presume he meant to eat it, but he went about it all wrong. She started screaming about how we were recycling food, that she was good friends with the health inspector, that she was going to see us in court. The histrionics brought my boss out of his office, and after chewing out the idiot chef, he tried to smooth things over. I don't remember much, we were fuck all busy, and since he'd taken over the drive-thru, I hopped onto another task. She wouldn't move forward, and the line was piling up. My boss was starting to get annoyed. They had stopped talking to each other. Her hot, fresh meal is up, and he goes to hand deliver it and tell her to get the fuck out of line. I'm not entirely sure, as I was halfway across the store trying to make drinks. All I remember is a surprised gasp from our food runner, and looking up to see a box of steaming hot chicken came sailing through the window and scatter across the front of the house. My boss had barely stepped back in time. We could only stare as the crazy lady roared out of the parking lot, and he snapped at the first person stupid enough to still be making eye contact to clean it up. I worked at a Vietnamese restaurant back in high school and I had a Viet family come in to eat. They gave me snobby vibe the entire time, especially after I told them I couldn't speak Vietnamese. They ordered regular pho but asked for no cilantro, so I rang the order in with no cilantro. It came out with cilantro in it and I told the kitchen what the family asked. The kitchen told me they couldn't do anything about it, so I told my manager and they told me to ask the family if they still wanted it. Family said yes, so I brought it out and they took out the cilantro and ate the entire thing. At the end of the meal they spoke to the owner and complained how I got their order completely wrong, got the food for free, and got their bill taken out of my pay. The owner told me I should have removed the cilantro myself. Shitty management, shitty customer. Edit, I was not angry that the customer ordered no cilantro. I was upset at the fact that they abused their rights by asking not to pay for their food when they clearly ate everything. Also, it's been a few years, haha. Not me, but I heard about my dad's former co-worker being an absolute asshole to a waitress. He'd only started working in my dad's department, IT, a few months earlier, and my dad did not like him from the start. This guy accompanied my dad on a business trip to Australia a couple of years back, and they went to a nice restaurant one evening. This guy proceeded to tell the waitress the food was horrible, then just resorted to personally insulting the waitress, which made her cry, on top of refusing to tip her. My dad immediately thought this guy is a complete asshole. That same guy a few weeks later also tried to get my dad fired, so he could get my dad's position as head of IT. My dad confessed to me that he was thinking of leaving that company anyway, but that guy made him GTFO. Thankfully he's well known in his industry. He's the type of guy that could resign a job on Friday afternoon, and start a new one on Monday morning, so to speak. So my dad submitted his resignation and immediately got a job elsewhere. Unfortunately the guy did get my dad's job, but lots of people in the IT department jumped ship to the company my dad was working at. As a result, the asshole who had taken my dad's job ironically got fired a year later because nobody wanted to work for him. Edit, okay, I'm getting a lot of responses about tipping in Australia. My dad was not aware you guys don't tip. He always tips everywhere he goes. Hope that clears it up. I worked at a bakery for 2 years, and I had to deal with honestly the most heinous and rude customers ever. I've worked in the food service industry my whole life, and lived in Toronto up until 3 years ago, and I have never dealt with such entitlement. Anyways, one day one of our staff members quit by text message 5 minutes before her shift, and 30 minutes before we were set to open at 8 AM on a Saturday. We were hard-pressed finding someone to cover, so I was alone until a front-of-house person was able to come in, about an hour later. I had one of the kitchen staff helping me, and all they could do was grab things and bag them as they weren't trained on cash or coffee. So here I am running around trying to help customers, make coffees, ring people through, and clearly stressed. This douchebag man was clearly annoyed that he had to wait, huffing and puffing, and eventually loudly exclaimed, "Fuck this, I'm not fucking waiting for this shit," and proceeded to throw his bagged muffin at my head and storm out. I legit almost chased him down. I was livid. Customers are shit lol. I've told this one before, but long story short, my buddy was 16 and got his first job at McDonald's in the food court at the mall. His third day of work was Black Friday and he was put on a cash register. There were 3 registers open, line well over 50 deep at each register stretched across the mall. Some asswipe gets to the front and starts talking shit about the wait. My buddy closes the register, hops over the counter and tells everyone in line to fuck off. Karens in the middle of the line were proclaiming, "You can't do that. People are such assholes." Oh, where to start? I worked in a cafe for a few years, and while there were some bad one-offs, the worst people were difficult regulars. There was one who would order the most popular thing on the menu but with a list of modifications a mile long, right down to what fruit to include with the side of fruit and how many inches tall to pile the turkey on the sandwich. She would always get it to go and then would about 50% of the time call the restaurant from home saying that the order wasn't correct and that she wanted a refund. However, my least favorite was this woman who would come in about an hour before closing and then stay until past closing, bugging you for little things piecemeal all the while. I get that at sit-down restaurants, customers can generally come in whenever they want as long as the doors aren't locked yet, and then stay as long as they want. However, we were a small cafe, and I would kick everyone out when I locked the doors. She just wouldn't leave. Once she was on the phone when it was time for her to leave lol. I ended up just shouting at her, loud enough for whoever was on the other line to hear, "It is time to leave the cafe now." People not wanting to leave was relatively common, although most people would leave right away when you asked. Once a woman just wanted to finish up one more thing on her computer. One more thing turned into one more thing, which turned into one more thing. She was sitting by the open window, and there was no air conditioning in the cafe. So, finally I just went and closed the window. She gave me the dirtiest look, but she got the fuck out lol. The first customer I described was my co-worker's worst nightmare, and he always made me deal with her since, while she was super annoying, I didn't mind as much. The people who wouldn't leave at the end of the day pissed me off so badly though. I used to manage a restaurant and hated those couple of times in 5 years of my working there when some entitled customers left without paying because the waitresses didn't come to pick up my money. That's a piece of shit move and a poor excuse, when all you need is to grab a waitress's attention by simply talking. Once it was a family of 4 who left the restaurant during a busy evening and we realized that the bill wasn't paid after some 10 minutes had passed. I checked the cameras and saw the father taking the bill, putting the money in, sitting there for just 3 to 4 minutes, looking around and taking the money back and leaving with the whole family. Lucky our owner was a great guy and told me to simply ban the fucker and his family. And to my surprise, that piece of shit came back with friends on a busy evening in a couple of months. I was very excited watching his face being embarrassed in front of his friends and customers sitting outside when I told him that he is banned, and when his wife started to get upset I told them I remembered them and told them the whole story with me checking the cameras and seeing him taking the money back and all. I worked in a Japanese restaurant and it was a small restaurant, so I was usually working as cashier, waiter, busboy, and delivery driver. Basically it was me handling everything and the owner would come out from the back and take over if there was a delivery. Anyway, One day we had a family come in. Mom and Dad got sushi rolls for themselves and then got chicken hibachis for the kids. The hibachi came with a side of rice and I watched as these kids started throwing rice at each other. Mom and Dad did absolutely nothing to stop them, like not even a, cut that out. When they left the place, all around their table was an absolute mess, and to make things worse the floor was carpeted, so cleaning rice out of it was a huge pain in the ass normally, but this was on a whole different level. Didn't even get a sorry about the mess from them. Back when I was a busboy, we had an older couple that I believe had an adopted son. Maybe 3 could have just been a grandkid, but for some reason I remember him being adopted. Anyway, literally every time they came in, this kid was throwing food everywhere, running around the restaurant, just being a huge pain. They never did anything to stop him. Then one day they walk in, and as I'm preparing for the usual chaos, I notice that they got another one. This couple that was totally unfit to raise a child had gone and adopted a second. She too was a little terror. It was my first week as a waitress at a Perkins. 2 old ladies came in 2 hours before the end of my night shift. They ordered the turkey specials, which came with soup, the meal, and dessert. I got their food and checked up on them. Everything was fine, but they were still eating. I came back 15 minutes later to check up again. One woman was finished, so I took her plate, but the other wasn't, so I left her to it. I came by again 10 minutes later and asked, still eating? The centerpieces in the middle of the table were positioned in such a way that I didn't notice the fork in her hand. She responded very rudely, obviously I am, what does it look it? I was new at this, so I was taken back. I apologized, and laughed it off nervously. At this point, however, the kitchen was 10 minutes to closing and I needed to put in their dessert order so the staff would know what items to not clean up and put away. So I asked the women if I could take their dessert orders, and the same woman looked at me angrily and said, do not rush us. We come here every week and never have experienced such poor service. There is no need for you to be hovering like this. I suppose I was hovering, but they were taking forever. I apologized and explained the kitchen was closing soon, but she wouldn't have it and sent me on my way. By the way, as all this happens, the other lady sat there awkwardly not saying a thing, although as I walked away I heard her tell her friend she shouldn't have yelled at me like that. I went back to the kitchen and talked trash with the other waitresses, but as I did I noticed my boss walking to their table. Oh great, so they're chatting now and she's not even finishing her food. So a half hour passes and the kitchen is closed and the restaurant is about to close too. But there they are still chatting. When they were finally done, I went and asked if I could take their dessert order. And guess what? They ordered something that needed to be prepared by the kitchen as well as coffee for the table. Well, the coffee machine had already been cleaned, which was a whole process, and the kitchen staff was gone. I told them that, and the one rude woman insisted I asked my boss to reopen the kitchen because he knew them and they were regulars. Having no choice, I asked him, and he reluctantly did it. We made a whole new batch of coffee and he whipped up their order in the kitchen. They got a ton of free coffee because we had nothing to do with the leftover. I had to stay an hour and a half late while my ride waited in the parking lot so I could re-clean the kitchen by myself. Then I got yelled at by my boss for not taking their dessert order earlier, and he gave me no chance to explain myself. To top it all off, when they left I got a measly $8 tip on a $75 bill. Worst day ever. Worked fast food in high school. I've got a few. 1. Man orders double cheeseburger with extra cheese and receives one with 4 slices instead of the usual 2. 2 minutes later, he is absolutely red in the face and screaming at the poor cashier. He's demanding to talk to the little shit that made his sandwich and asking if we think this is some kind of joke. Apparently, when he ordered extra cheese he wanted 1 extra slice, not 2. 2. Some guy comes to the drive-thru and orders 4 fish sandwiches. We only had 2 pieces of fish cooked and they were really close to their hold expiration time. Since we had to cook more anyway, my manager said to waste those 2 since they were old and make all fresh ones for the customer. Guy comes up to the window and they ask him to pull forward because it'll be a couple minutes. Meanwhile, we keep serving other cars. After a couple orders go out, this dude is in the lobby and asking for a manager. He is irate that we made him wait on his food while serving other people. The manager apologizes and explains the situation. Most people would be thrilled we didn't serve them old food, but for some reason that just made this guy angrier. He starts yelling louder, and then threatens my manager with physical violence over it. She asks him to leave and threatens to call the police. Dude storms out, slamming the door so hard he broke the latch, and squeals his tires as he leaves the parking lot, without his order. Never came back for it, either. 3. We had this regular who came in every Sunday morning and ordered the same thing, a side salad, super-size fries, and a Happy Meal for her grandkid. One day, the person who bagged her order put the salad and the fries in the same bag as we were trained to do. If you've never seen a super-size fry container, they're tall, and the side salad is in one of those little rectangular plastic things, so as you can imagine the fries fell over. For a normal person this is no big deal, but not for this lady. She needed new fries and a new salad, in separate bags this time. Of course the fries we had already made that came up 1 minute ago were not good enough, and she refused to leave or accept the new ones until we made a fresh basket. I have 2 from the same restaurant. First one goes like this. I worked as a busboy and it was getting near closing time. At this point it was around 9:30, we closed at 10, and this table who was probably 20-ish feet away from where I was started trying to say to me that's a free meal. I stopped vacuuming because I just didn't understand what they were asking me. Supposedly they were under the belief that if someone was vacuuming before close then they got a free meal. So eventually the owner comes up to me and asks me how far away I was vacuuming and I said the same thing. She just told me yeah they're idiots and told me to wait a little bit. They ended up leaving past 10:30 and I don't think they left a tip. They didn't get their free meal. Another shorter story was the time that 2 giant groups of about 16 people each came in a few weeks later at about 9:45. I think I got home at midnight that night. Back in college I was working my first job as a front-of-house staff for an on-campus locally owned burger place. My main job was to call the order numbers out to customers and pass their food off. Easy enough. Well, one night we get absolutely slammed with to-go orders at close. I'm the only person out at the front and there were 2 cooks behind me working on the food. A man ordered 2 burgers. Cool. Well, we're so busy I'm obviously not aware of what number goes with what customer off the top of my head, and I call out a number. A customer takes it and heads out. Turns out the wrong customer grabbed that man's order. He proceeded to yell profanities at me, calling me a fucking idiot, demanding his food be free and that he gets free fries. All in front of other customers. I started crying. It held up everyone else's food in the process. The manager has to tell him to fuck off and remakes his food. It was just one giant shit show. Not necessarily the worst crime here, but there was group of little old ladies that would come in every Sunday after church. All 4 would get the same thing. Every week. Iced tea and a half grilled Asian salad with a senior discount. $4.19. Every time they paid with $4 bills and 2 dimes. The tip? 4 cents. While this sucked enough on its own, the fact that they were always super sweet to everyone made it burn even more. But on top of all that, on Sunday morning/afternoon, a really busy shift, they would sit there for several hours. So on a busy day when you only had 3 or 4 tables, having one of those tables taken for hours with a guaranteed 4-cent tip really sucked for your income for the day. Also worked at a fast food restaurant in high school. We closed at 9 on Sundays. Almost every Sunday, a group from a local church would roll in at about 8:55 and order full meals, full desserts, and then sit in the dining room until 10:30 or 11. We ended up having to make extra strong Sunday ammonia cleaner that we would use on the surrounding tables to get them to leave. As a high schooler, it was infuriating. pizza, ice cream, sandwich shop in a small rural town. I was on delivery. We had this guy who ordered maybe once a week or so. This customer lived a solid half an hour outside town. None of us knew why the owner ever agreed to deliver to this guy in the first place, being that far out, but we used to wonder if the owner was being threatened into it. The level of shit the customer would raise if you didn't bring him cheese and peppers for his pizza was absolute madness. There was an incident where a delivery driver found the customer waiting on his porch polishing a shotgun, and the first thing the customer did was loosely point the gun towards the driver and say, "Did you bring my cheese and peppers?" We fully believe the customer would have shot our driver if the answer had been no. As it was, the driver didn't have as much cheese and peppers as the customer would have liked. Customer called the restaurant, threw a fit. From then on, when we delivered to this customer, because the owner didn't cut him off, we were told to take a bucket of cheese and peppers with us. I'm talking like one of those bulk ice cream buckets you buy at the supermarket. We all kept on in our trucks. But we had to start taking an extra just for this one customer. I wonder if the guy was even in it for the pizza. So a few years ago I worked at Pizza Hut. This couple came in and they both looked terrible. They had horrible scars and terrible acne on their faces. They were older, so I don't even know how they had acne, but anyway. They came in and I got stuck with them. They stank. Like. They must have not showered in years. I almost gagged every time I had to go near that table. You could literally smell these people 2 feet from the table. It was just horrible. I can't even describe to you how bad this smell was, and I was forced to act like nothing was wrong. They were both very rude on top of it, always wanting something and just general jerks. They didn't leave a tip, of course, and even tried to demand discounts while paying for their food.